well-being actually look like? What can dads do to prepare themselves?
That's a great question. And that's what's really interesting about this study. It's not just one magic bullet.
Okay.
It's this multifaceted approach
Okay.
that we're going to unpack in our next segment.
All right, stay tuned because we are going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of how dads can proactively protect their mental health before their little one arrives.
Thank you for being curious and subscribe.